Welcome to Conversations on the Edge with Tom and TJ, where Generation X and Millennial talk about restoration, the Edge version 3, and the world.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. All right, everybody, welcome. This is Tom, and I am here with Jeff Carrier with Restoration ERP, and very excited about this. Jeff and I work together on our business development class that we have every year here in Cape Canaveral, and it will be June 11th and 12th, and it's one of our favorite events, Jeff, as you know, and can't wait for that event. So we have plenty of room, plenty of seats left. So we're going to circle back around to that here in a little bit. But we always start off with something fun, exciting that can be job related or not in job related that's going on in your world. And I know, Jeff, you do a lot of traveling and stuff, and you do a lot of fun things. So what's going on in your life that you want to talk to everybody about, just to start things off here today, and then I'll fill you in on mine.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that's fun, exciting. I mean, you are right. I do like to travel a lot, and I'm always having my trips and so forth. And I guess right now, in terms of travel or excitement, is been spending the entire year so far in Austin. So having home base in Asheville, North Carolina, which is beautiful and great, and being able to spend the time in a different location, exploring second home bases, is kind of currently what I'm doing right now. And next month I'll be turning the big 4-0. So yeah, that's the exciting stuff here.
Cool. So are you planning to move to Austin or stay in both Asheville and Austin?
The plan is to do both. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to kind of have like a dual residency and be able to go back and forth for different reasons. So that's the plan.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very, very good. And, I'm here on the Space Coast. And so we just had Artemis, Artemis will be landing. They're coming back to Earth here tomorrow. And so we're all very excited about, the re-entry, which is the most difficult part of space travel. And, for the astronauts that just went around the moon, and very, very anxious to see all the pictures and everything that they took, because there's a lot of things that they took like 10,000 pictures and stuff. And so it'll be really cool to see what they took. And they did take pictures. They did take pictures of the Apollo landing sites and everything. So maybe they can finally put to rest that, yes, we did go to the moon before, and we landed on the moon. Now we may have had Hollywood involved just in case. And so,
yeah. Well, we'll see what the skeptics have to say after even more documentation on that. But
everybody, now it's like, oh, that's AI generated, or that's fake news, or there's something, no one believes anything anymore, and it's like, I'm sure that the flat Earth people, even though you just seen live pictures from that show that it's definitely not a flat Earth, are still flat earthers no matter what, because it's all fake, and so.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I don't know if you've seen some of the everything that NASA put out with the Artemis program, but it's very impressive on at least the plans and the ideas over the next 6 years of our launch schedules and what we'll be creating and putting up on the moon. It really feels like science fiction, which is exciting from my perspective of being forward thinking and so forth. But the plans that they have are very forward thinking and exciting in what they're going to be able to do or plan to do in the next 6 years.
Well, and NASA has been focused on deep space. And so they contracted SpaceX and Blue Origin to do all of the satellite stuff and all the launches so that they could focus on deep space. And so 2028, the next Artemis 3 will leave some things behind. And then Artemis 4 will be the one that will land on the moon. in 2028. And then in the meantime, you also have Blue Origin, who has launched the New Glenn rocket twice, and that's their moon rocket. They will be launching astronauts here probably within the next year. And then you have SpaceX that it has their Starship that they've been working on also. And so there will come a time here and then over the next 24 months, or 4 years, where there will be there will be two private and then of course NASA, um, and Boeing and Lockheed Martin. That's United Space Alliance or United Launch Alliance that is behind Artemis. And so there's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years, going to be a lot of stuff going to the moon, a lot of development. There's going to be a space station that's going to be going around the moon. That will be kind of it'll kind of be the stop point before you drop down to the moon, that type of stuff. And there's an asteroid they're going to put in orbit around the moon also to give some tests for drilling and launching off of the moon onto the asteroid. There's a lot of stuff that is going to be happening, and then of course there's going to be people living up there, and so it's going to be
Yeah.
I think it'll be a while before you can catch a flight to the moon, to stay at a Hilton up there on the moon, but it will happen probably in the next 20 years or so, 10 to 20 years, depending upon budgets and all that, and how the economy goes. Because I've been on the Space Coast now for 32 years, and I can tell you that when the economy slows down, space is one of the first things that gets cut. Space and education always is the first two things to get cut. Because there's a lot of public money that goes in. You have SpaceX and you have Blue Origin, and the Blue Origin rocket that goes off the beach over here is just fantastic, unbelievable, as well as
Yeah.
Artemis. And so that's happening. Blue Origin's more quiet about what they do, and that's actually one of their mottos. I've got friends that work for Blue Origin that used to work for SpaceX and also work for NASA, and one of their motto at Blue Origin is "We do, we don't talk." And so
Mm.
they can't talk about anything until it's getting ready to happen. And so, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's Bezos and all that. And so,
Right. Right. When I saw the video on the plans,
mhm,
it really made me think of again like the sci-fi. Like there's a TV show on Apple. I don't know if you've ever seen it called For All Mankind. It
mhm.
really reminded me that we'll be soon living
Oh
that
yeah,
type of world, like you were describing with the
oh
the
yeah.
station and people on the moon and so forth. So exciting
Oh yeah,
stuff.
that's coming sooner than later. And
Yep.
there will be some type the first part is a station that is outside of, circling the moon, just similar to the International Space Station here, to where before we actually occupy the moon. And now that SpaceX, Elon has shifted his focus from Mars to now he wants to go to the moon too. And so, because everybody's very competitive and
Yep.
it's like,
Yep.
there's a lot of people out there that think everything that happens in space is SpaceX, but SpaceX is a part of it.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the Falcon 9 is an incredible rocket, one of the most successful rockets that has ever been built. And the the his Starship, though, that's blowing up about four of those things, and so they're still working on that. But the last one actually was very successful. So hopefully, it's going to be really exciting. And then you have the Chinese, and so the Chinese are going to be up there also. So it's going to be very, very, very active, and the Chinese have had a uh, probes on the dark side of the moon now for 5 years, and so they've been up there for quite a while with their probes, and so a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of minerals up there. There's a lot of minerals on satellite or on the asteroids that they want to drill on all of those, and so there's a reason why the billionaires of the world are anxious to get to space. They want to find that next mineral that doesn't exist on Earth right now, and they want to own it.
Yeah, it's crazy, and definitely a different type of space race than we had back in the
Yeah.
day.
Well, but you have the race with everybody here in the U.S., but then you do have the Chinese in there too, and so that's
Right.
you know
Exactly.
that's going to be happening, and so all right, so who's what part, all it's going to be interesting to see. Are we doing this together, or are we going to be up there fighting like we do down here on Earth? And so hopefully everything's going to be fine. All right, so let's circle back around and let's talk a little bit of business. We talk space, and I could talk space all day long. So um, let's get into restoration ERP in particular, and with our class that we have coming up June 11th and the 12th here in Cape Canaveral. Jeff will be doing a 2 hour presentation on restoration ERPs, on emergency response plans. Back when I started in the industry back in the 80s, they were called disaster recovery plans. And some people still do. It just depends upon how you want, whatever you want to call them. It's all
Yeah.
about bringing the client, about opening the door with the client and finding out about their business, so that when something happens, as a restorers, we're ready. We're ready to respond as quickly as possible. And so, Jeff, tell us a little bit about ERPs. Then give us an overview of what you currently have, and then we'll get into your new stuff that you're working on.
Yeah. So ERPs, or as you mentioned, any way you want to kind of call them or describe them, within your company, everyone uses a different term, which is fine and good. Is really meant to kind of give us a way to try and provide value to the facility manager and the property manager in advance of them having a loss, so we can kind of start building the relationship prior and based around providing value. So it's a the kind of a consultative sale kind of approach, and where we're trying to gather a commitment from them in advance. So we'll collect information from them. We'll put together a plan that they can have. It allows us to be better prepared for responding quicker and minimizing costs and other plus advantages that we can have. And then in return, we feel like as a restorer that we have this commitment from them to get this phone call. And so it's just a slightly different strategy, per se, in terms of how we're going about creating that relationship with the person. Of course, you can always do your lunches, do your kind of slow get to know them, they get to know you type of thing. You introduce your organization, which you can do through this process as well. But that's the core idea and structure of the ERPs. And similar to yourself, Tom, when I was doing this in the industry, I was building them up on binders as well, paper, and we trying to get a signed agreement in place, and then you do the full-on walkthrough with the camera that you end up printing off all the sheets for, and then giving it to someone, and it sticks on a shelf and collects dust afterwards, but it accomplished the job, right? And so the,
Yeah.
the job of the ERP, for the most part, is to, one, differentiate ourselves in our sales process, and two, to help secure the account slash give us permission to start building the relationship and get that commitment. So even if it sat there on the shelf with a binder, it accomplished the job, and now I have the relationship with the facility manager, the risk manager, you name it, and then I can go in there every month, bi-monthly, quarterly, whatever your kind of touch base cadence is going to be with them, and keep building on that relationship. And now I guess we're pushing close to 6 years now. About 6 years ago, when I started this, and it was just a small little plugin app. The idea was to bring all of this online, right? Like, why is this not online? Why can't we equip independent, restorers with a branded version that is their app, their plan that they can bring as a solution to their commercial clients in their local markets. So that way the plan is more useful. So that way it's useful for the restoration company in terms of being able to access emergency contacts 24/7, as well as floor plans and so on and so forth, other documents and storage, as well as to the clients themselves, right? So if they need a report, that way they can submit to insurance. They now have that value. If they need to click to call or access anyone through the app, all of their properties are laid out on the app. It's available 24/7 to them, and they can go on there and access it if necessary as well. So that's the kind of the movement that we started 6 years ago, was to kind of move this proven sales strategy. It's been around for, as you noted, for a long time, and kind of and move it to a more modern day format.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that a lot of guys they just don't they don't do them currently, and it opens the doors up. And so for
Mhm.
smaller restoration companies, you really have to put forth the effort to do them, and you might be more strategic in how in who you go after. For larger companies, some of them, will have salespeople. That's all they do is
Yeah.
ERPs. And for the smaller company, though, you can be very specific, very strategic, because you want to be able to follow up, because that's the biggest thing. Because back in the day when we were, it was a 2 or 3 page document, and literally
Mhm.
it went someplace, and you might call them once a year or something. And it just was like, all right, so what's happening with that? We're just waiting for that event to happen. And I think at one time we actually had some salespeople that were getting paid to do, so many a week, 10 a week or something. So you'd have all of these ERPs that nobody was following up on or doing anything with. And so when there was a disaster, you'd be on the phone with them and they would be like, oh, that person's not here no more. That's, we tore down that building. We're over at a different building now. And so there would be a lot of details that, because we weren't following up, we weren't very
Yeah.
successful with. Now, I will say that when the World Trade Center, we did the World Trade Center in '93. Everybody's heard me talk about that a million times. That was, we were a $10 million company at the time, the company I was working for, in that bank, the restoration company. And, $10 million company, there's a lot of $10 million companies out there today. And that was, still the largest project ever done. And it was off of an ERP that was done 3 months prior to that loss happening. And so they're out there. And so expand
Yeah.
a little bit more on that, Jeff, how these things open the door for restorers.
Yeah. And, it really starts with having, like, how we're going to approach getting these accounts, right? And so I think of it as like, here's our sales strategy. And one of the things I like about ERPs is that, especially with my background in sales and some of the heavy type of Fortune 500 sales I was doing prior to getting into the registration industry, was having like a sales process and cadence. And one of the things I like about an ERP is We can, like, let's say I want to get the World Trade Center. Okay, great. Well, how am I going to go about that? What's the strategy and the tactics I'm going to use? And an ERP is one of those. And one of the benefits of trying to execute an ERP with the World Trade Center is ideally we go through this sales process and we have our intro, and we have the items that we're going to be pitching, and then we present the solution to them. And ideally we get a yes or a no, right? And then that way that allows us as salespeople to secure the account and build on the relationship, to your point, right? Like, you still have to service the account. Just getting the ERP is not enough. You got to go out there, you have to service it, you have to go build a relationship. You have to make sure operations is going to be able to help support you, right? You can't have an ERP call in and then no one knows what's going on with the sales and marketing, right? So it's a full buy-in from the organization. But what it does allow is a salesperson, and as well as the managers and owners, to understand, okay, we have this account secured, and now we can be efficient with their time. Otherwise, you have salespeople, right? And I've managed commercial account managers where we do a lunch, everything sounds great, and now we're just waiting and praying. And it's not a really good situation to be in. Whereas the odds of having that phone call after I've got the pre-loss agreement signed, after I've walked through the property, and I'm checking in them and servicing the account, that's almost 100%. If all of those things are in place, it's almost 100% I'm going to get that first phone call for us to execute. And so that leans us to a much better sales process and cadence. I go push people through that process. I get a yes or a no. If they say no, not a problem. Maybe I'd throw them into a nurture campaign if they're a big enough client like the World Trade Center. If not, then we just move on and we move the next group of people through this process. So I really like that from even just as a salesperson, I have a purpose to this meeting. I have value I'm bringing to this meeting. And, we can discuss a little bit more of like what some of those items can be, especially if we try and chunk down what an ERP is, in its individual pieces, to allow us to kind of build these up a little bit easier. But it definitely gives us an ability to stand out from the crowd as well, right? If you're walking into the trade center, we have a solution on how to be better prepared, how to manage your building better, how we can document it for you, how we can supply this information readily available for you online and in a PDF version. And then that allows us to open up the doors for these larger clients. Otherwise, what is going to separate you as a $10 million company going after World Trade Center? Ish, when I secured the Harris Casino account out in Western North Carolina. It's like there's no real reason maybe we should have had that, but the only reason we got that is that we presented them with a much better solution than anything they had when it came to protecting their property.
Yeah. What would you recommend if I'm a restorer and I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, so I don't do ERPs right now. What would be my first steps in moving in that direction? What should be my first thoughts that I would be looking at as a restorer?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And we get on a lot of calls with a lot of owners that are in this situation, right? It's hey, I want more commercial work. How do I go about that? And the first thing that we want to be able to understand in this situation is okay, what type of resources do you have available internally so that we can execute this correctly? Meaning, do we have a sales rep, a BDR rep, that we can equip them with the sales strategy and they can go out there and execute it? Because if you're going to say, hey, I'm an owner operator and I've got some relationships out in the market and I can go do this, you can maybe generate some relationships. You can talk to those facilities that you're out on site while you're doing the loss. But the reality is to probably get the maximum impact is you're going to need someone at least 50% of their time working on commercial, is what I would say. So even if you have one person and they're doing insurance and plumbers or chasing fires, if they can dedicate at least 50% of their time doing commercial, then you will find a benefit. And that's where I would start.
Yep.
And the next part is you're going to want to get in a proper sales process and procedure for them, as in, okay, what does that first walk-in call sound and look like, right? And what does our follow-up call look like? What information are we collecting on these walkthroughs? What can we add to a plan that maybe no one else can? Every plan is all about understanding the pain points to a facility and then adding in that information into the plan. So let me give you an example. Like, some restoration companies might be able to have additional equipment and stage equipment where versus others cannot, right? So if you're working, this is something that we also did. If you're working with an organization or speaking to them and they do a lot of work in-house, they have a large team, they're trying to minimize costs, right? That's one of the benefits of having a plan in place or a team. Well, the thing that they probably don't have a lot of is equipment and then experience on that equipment. So part of your plan, your ERP plan, is not only about like just documenting the floor plan. It could be like, well, in order to help you also minimize costs and reduction on time, is why don't we stage some equipment here for you guys in case you do need it in the event of an emergency? Small amounts. The sales rep can check on it bi-monthly, quarterly, check the hour readers. You're still renting them the equipment. They get it at a reduced cost. They don't have to call you out and get a $10,000 bill every time. It's a win-win when there's way not enough equipment or way too large of a loss. Your equipment is there at minute zero and you have the ERP intact, right? And not only that, we can also add in doing proper moisture drying documentation for them. If they're doing the work themselves, they need proper documentation. So these are small things that we can add to an ERP plan once we understand more of how their facility works and operates and what some of their pain points are. And one thing I'll add to this as well as we're like discussing ERPs and about how efficient with it. We talked about, putting a sales rep that's dedicating at least 50% of their time towards it to have an effective campaign. Well, the other aspect to the commercial sales and with ERPs is that sometimes gets overlooked is we all have to deal with retention, right? Like we have our customer acquisition costs on how much does it take time-wise, relationship building time to get this commercial client. And we all know, no matter what business you're in, it costs a lot more to replace a customer, a client, even an employee, right, than just retaining one. But it's inevitable that these facility managers and property managers move. So what's our retention plan? If we have an ERP in place and the building is documented and the next facility manager comes in because the last one went to a different organization and we give them the user credentials to their online app and sit down with them, what are the chances that we retain that client for a lot longer? Yep. So having a retention plan is also vitally important for anyone who is doing a lot of commercial work as well.
And another thing too is, what I talk about in the class also is have an ERP for your ERP. And so what that means is you get all these people signed up and you're like, man, Tom, we've got 10 million square feet of property that when something happens, it's on. Well, make sure that it's not a widespread event that's happening in your backyard. And I had some clients up in the Panhandle that Hurricane Michael came along, and they were like, Tom, man, we got 10 million square feet. When this happens, man, this is gold. And they didn't have they didn't have a backup plan. So the storm came through, dropped trees on their homes. So they had to take care of their homes first before they could get to their clients. And by the time they got to their clients, the people on the outside that were waiting to come in were already on their jobs. And so they didn't have that backup plan. So they had some backup plans waiting in the wings. So, hey, if we can't get to these, you guys get to these jobs, handle them for us. Make sure you have a backup plan for that major event that may be happening. If you're out in California, it might be an earthquake, because you have to also think outside of the box. Like, oh, all right, so we sign up all these ERPs. Can we service them when the time comes? Can we service them on an individual basis? Probably not a problem. They call us up on the weekend. we got in, we had a fire, we had a flood, whatever it may be. But if there's a widespread event where
Hmm.
it's a catastrophe, might be very difficult to get to all of those people. So we want to make sure that we have a backup plan for our ERP so that we're able to service them in a widespread event. I'm here in Florida, and so widespread events are kind of, what we expect almost every summer. We didn't have anything last year, but you never know. You never know when we just had a gale that was pounding on us here over the last 3 days. That I'm sure that there's some water damage. There's probably some roof damage. It was pretty severe. Actually, it felt like a tropical storm for the last 3 days, and so um, those events happen, and so you have to be ready for that widespread. Are you ready for when that moment happens, and make sure you have your backup in line with that.
And it really goes to just having a full commitment to the program, and not just saying, hey, sales and marketing is closing ERPs and then kind of
Yeah.
just wait, right? It's like, okay, organizationally, how do we handle it when we, close X amount so that we are prepared in case there is a storm related event? One of our larger, clients and power users closed over 36 million square feet of just documented square
Mhm.
feet in the property last year. Like 1 year, 36 million added, right? So what happens if something something occurs in one of these locations? And then making sure that, and we all have turnover internally with the organization as well, as like ERP program should be there, should be discussed on a regular basis internally. And yeah, so one of the things I also like to think about with the ERP is, what we're paying to acquire customers in the restoration world. As restorers, there's a lot of people that are still paying for the pay per lead, right? And they pay the $1,000 for the
Yeah.
lead, and sometimes we know it's more, but it's a real lead and it's $1,000 and it's highly profitable. And sometimes you pay the plumber that, sometimes you pay the third party leads that.
Mhm.
Well, if we sat our commercial account manager, and so when you're thinking about how to deploy more resources and funds,
Mhm.
if we hired a full-time commercial sales person and we said you just sit on one, let's just say they got to talk to a facility manager for the entire day, and their entire day was, like that's all they spent with that facility person. If they did that for that entire day and documented their building, there's a extremely high chance that we secure that next call from that person, right? 8 hours is an unreasonable ask, but the chances are is that we will receive that next loss from them. So is them spending that amount of time there worth, say, what you're paying for $1,000 for that loss? For a commercial loss, it would be. And so, but the reality is that we don't have to pay someone $1,000 per day to sit there and walk through. That's not how much a salesperson costs, right? If they did that every single day for 52 weeks, that's 260 business days in a year. It'd be $260,000. And it doesn't cost that. So for a fraction of the cost, we could assign a commercial salesperson to just walk through these facilities all day, every day to secure accounts and get commercial losses at a much lower rate.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's follow up, follow up, follow up. Like when you said if you have turnover in the company, all right, who's in charge of the ERPs?
Yeah.
Your main ERP guy is gone or girl is gone. All right, who is managing that now? What's our plan when that happens? So it's really it's signing them up is one thing, but managing them is the biggest piece.
Yeah. I see it as where you have like three different types of touch points after you secure the ERP account. You have your value touch points, which is what you're describing. I'm going to touch base with you. I'm going to keep your plan up to date. I'm going to make sure that the plan is got the correct people. I'm going to deliver updates, add-ons to it. Maybe we walk into a new building every other
Mhm.
months or every 6 months, whatever. We add new information that's my value I'm providing. Then we have our social related touch points, right? Those are all very straightforward, obvious. We bring someone to the game or go out and do, after hours event. Those are all fun. So we're building our social activity. And then when a call comes in, that's when we have our customer service related touch points. We got to make sure this job is executed correctly. I'm speaking with the internal team and project managers, admit managers. I'm providing transparency and communication to the risk manager and facility people who need certain documentation. And that's my third opportunity, is the customer service touch point. So I always kind of see it as broken down kind of in those three prongs once we secure an account. And they all have to be executed, to your point, to keep the account and expand on it.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great way to open the door, a great way to keep communication going, a great way to follow up, a reason to follow up. Once you've performed the ERP, it's real easy to call them up and say, hey, it's a half year, or if you do it yearly or twice a year, whatever it is, whatever the follow up is, you're in front of. I'm sorry about that. You're in front of them, and it gets you in front of them to begin with, and it gives you that reason to follow up and stay in front of them. And don't get too relaxed thinking that we have that job. Make sure when an event happens that you're knocking on their door to see how they're doing, because you know how it is. We're here in Florida. If you leave your guard down for a second, there's going to be another company there. And
Yep.
no matter how good a relationship that you have, and sometimes, it can turn into an ugly battle, a legal battle too, because they couldn't wait around for you to get there. And so make sure you can perform and do what we say we were going to do. And so Jeff, tell us about what's new. I know you're working on some new AI tools, and what can we expect for all those that are using ERPs right now? What are some of the things that you can tell us about, or that you want to tell us about anyway, that you're working on that could be really cool, and how AI is going to really help us out?
Yeah. So there's a number of things that we're working on, and that we've really kind of been able to roll out and implement over the last 12 plus 24 months, I feel like. And what we're really trying to do is make this as easy as possible to get the information in, right? Because one of the things that we see on our end is, if we can get the information in easy, then one, obviously our clients don't go anywhere, but then the restorer can execute these plans a lot easier, right? And so the number one kind of objection you might face out in the field is time related things with the facility and property manager, getting their time to kind of help you put this information in or collect it as a restorer. And so a couple new things, one of our newest layouts and things that we've done, and it's one of our favorites because this is one of the most actionable takeaways, in terms of just, instead of just collecting information, is our emergency alert notification system. So we also expanded our communication tree. So communication tree is, very important for any organization. Is who are we calling in the event of an emergency, in what order, who should be on what tier, and what's the priority level there. So we have an expanded communication tree where you can build out the communication tree per building. So one organization, if they have 100 different properties, they can build out 100 different communication trees if they like. And they can also tie people to a certain tier or stage of the communication tree for every single building. So you don't have to build out 100. You just, this is the emergency person of overall 100 properties. And when you add a new property in, it automatically adds in all the org level people. So, and that's as simple as just clicking to add a person that's already in the system, right? You've added in their staff, which you can upload by CSV, or just taking a few minutes to add by phone. And then you can just do a drop down select and add this person to this tier, add that person to that tier. And now we have our communication tree. Well, we've taken that a step further as well and said, okay, well, now if there's an event, an emergency, now let's tie in the restore to the actual emergency response workflow and process. So the facility manager on site And this is part of like the discovery process that you can get into with the property manager is, how do you notify your team in the event of an emergency? How long does that take you? How do you keep that up to date? So on and so forth. Because now we're equipping the restorers with all of this inside the ERP app.
Yep.
And so the facility manager can go in there and click send an emergency alert, tiers 1 and 2, the emergency alerts, click add photos to it, right? And send via SMS and email. And then every single person on those tiers immediately get an emergency notification that there's an issue, a sprinkler head went off at building, 107 downtown, including you guys, including the restore. So as they're alerting their internal team, the restoration company gets alerted. They can do their internal process and kind of like you described, having an ERP for the ERP. Well, you guys better be ready to, have your communication and how what you're going to do once you get that alert. So now you get the alert internally. And I imagine something like the commercial account manager touches base with the MIT manager. Yep, we're on it. The guys are going to be at the shop grabbing the truck. It's already loaded. We'll be there in 45 minutes. Great. Then the commercial account manager can go into the app and just say, advisory follow-up notification, all tier levels or whatever is necessary, and say ABC Restoration Company's en route, be there with equipment within 45 minutes. You can all do that within 5 minutes of receiving the alert. And now their internal team, right? Superiors, key stakeholders, regionals all see that. And because it says who it came from too, right? So it'll say it came from Jeff, commercial account manager at ABC Restoration. Like, who's this company? They're now alerting us that they're on the way. We just alerted our guys. And so that's a new addition that we've added to help with the before, during, and after process, right? So with ERPs and losses, you had the before, during, and after. ERPs were very much like all about preparing info, and then, like we described, it kind of sat there, right?
Yep.
So we want to make it dynamic. We wanted to make it easy to update. Everything is a line item inside the restoration ERP. We want to make it so that way it has useful actions. So sending an emergency alert. And we're working on to kind of take this a step further, and I'll kind of take a break after this, kind of gauge your feedback on this. We're taking this a step further, and we've kind of built something for what we call our like 5-minute commercial win.
Mm-hmm.
Again, one of the challenges that you have with selling the ERP in general, not the restoration ERP, right? We try and make it as easy as possible, but just getting the property manager's time, getting to understand what they're doing. And so what we want to do is we want to start breaking this down into very individual small tasks, as in, okay, well, what's the parts and pieces that go into an ERP? Well, I need contact info. It'd be nice to have a floor plan.
Mm-hmm.
I like to have photos of the shutoff, right? And so we have these individual elements that as by themselves is not a lot. So we can break these up, and I'm outlining this as like the 7 baby steps to a restoration ERP plan. And so as a great like action item for salespeople, because I talk to a lot of different salespeople, and one of the things that they want is they want it sound different. They want to look different when they come in. They want to have a purpose, right? They hate going in there and just constantly be like, hey, how's it going? Yep. So we've developed an initial 5-minute commercial win. Right. And so this is what it sounds like. And this is the flow. Okay. You're a restoration. You walk in. Okay. And here's like kind of like the verbiage. You say, hey, we're a restoration company in the area. We keep an internal notification system for buildings around us. So if anything comes up, we can communicate quickly and easily to you. You mind if I grab your info real quick so I can have your building on file? Takes 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. When we're doing a drop-in, we're trying to just get 5 minutes, right? Or schedule time for the further. So we collect the information that's essentially on their business card, their name, their title, their email and phone, hopefully, right? We add it to the communication tree while we're standing in front of them. Great. I'm just going to add this to our building plan. I'm going to add this to our communication tree. It's going to take just a couple minutes. And then you send them the test alert and say, can you check your phone? That's our EMS, emergency alert notification system. Mm-hmm. And it lands on their phone, and then you see their reaction, right? That opens the rest of the conversation. That's what it looks like when we interact with our clients in case of emergencies, so you have that. And then you then that's your visit. Then our leave is, that's all I need before I head out. Is there anyone else in the building who might need to be notified and put on this list? A maintenance lead, property manager, etc. Right. And at that point, they're like, well, that'd be probably pretty helpful for so and so to also have that. Why don't you just add their name in just in case? Okay, no problem. And by the way, before I leave, this same system allows you to send your own alerts internally too. So if you had a pipe burst or power outage, you can notify your whole team with one click. Happy to show that to you whenever you want. So the impact of that visit, right, to me feels like we're collecting important information on that property that we clearly want to get a call to, because we're not getting a call to it in the first place. I've now completely separated myself from the competition. I showed up, I'm collecting building data. This is just my job. I'm a disaster preparedness advisor, however you want to frame it. I've got your building information. I sound, look different. The next step I come in, I can add in a little bit more information to that plan. And before they know it, I've got a little bit of a mini ERP plan in place.
Yep. And the beautiful thing about is those notifications and everything too, when there's something something happens, even if it's something minor, those are all those things create this pattern of like, all right, this is our company. These are the guys that we're going to, because here was this minor thing that came up and boom, this went into motion. So they know that when something big happens that you're going to be there. And so it really strengthens your position with this tool.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So that's a big one that we've recently released just this year. And we're in to your point on the AI stuff. Again, one of the things that we heard a lot about is understanding and what goes into an ERP, how to sell it, how to communicate that. And so we built and trained a model on building and selling ERPs, right? Exactly what we would say in an email, exactly what we would say in an opening script, how we would overcome objections, right? So if someone said, hey, we do the work in-house, well, our ERP co-pilot that is AI trained on building and selling ERPs will give your salespeople the exact conversation flow of what we should be asking next, our open-ended what and how questions, right? In terms of kind of gauging and setting you up for staging equipment, getting moisture documentation in their process, so on and so forth. So we have that as well added to the platform. It's right inside the app so they can converse with it. And to take it a step further, we're excited to use the AI as a way to kind of help iterate and speed learning this process. Because in the past, you would have to meet with someone on a regular basis, a weekly basis, and then it's just a slow iteration process.
Yep.
We're hoping that AI can help with that because you can be in there 24/7. So much so that we actually have voice coaches that we're releasing, and we have one voice coach right now that is your AI companion voice coach that will call you on your phone, and you can say, "Hey, I'm on the way over to the World Trade Center. This is the situation I'm in. This is what Tom said to me last time. Tell me how to handle this." And he's going to walk you through the mirror labeling calibrated questions framework that we've trained it on. So again, it's specific to how we've trained it, that we believe in, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
And you can just talk to it, right? And just get practice and iterate. And that way you can do it on your own free time in the comfort of your privacy and home. And we'll be releasing the property manager version, so that way you can role play against the property manager. And so those are some of the recent releases that we have that's going to help with, the training part, but also like building the ERP. I'm going to an assisted living facility. Here's your property. You throw in the address. What questions or what information should I collect specifically about this property? And it can do research for you and then give you some information on what types of questions to ask during your ERP walkthrough.
Because every property is different, whether it's, if it's assisted living, if it's senior living, if it's, hospitality, office buildings, there's different entry points and different things how you want to introduce yourself, how you want to go through that. So that education on the front end for the salespeople that will be going in and talking, on the front end to the client, that's fantastic. And so, it's interesting. For me, I'm slowly working my way into AI. I use it, for writing and stuff like that, kind of like everybody else, and of course, searches and things. And so, but I've also have a couple books that I want to write. So you know, I'm gonna be talking my book into being, because I talk a lot and I drive a lot and stuff, and so I'm gonna be talking and driving and then editing, and then we'll see what happens. But it's exciting to see how it all plays together, and how, and I think in the educational part, like you were talking about the support, for me, it's going to be some of the things like on the online classes and stuff, like the question bot, that pops up where you can ask it questions, and
Yep.
that type of thing. That's probably my next step, with the online university stuff, and then also in the live classes too. And so what we're gonna let's circle back around to our live class, that we're, if we want to learn more about ERPs and meet Jeff in person. We're going to be in Cape Canaveral, June 11th and 12th. And it's always our favorite class. We have a lot of fun. We have a cookout by the pool. Everybody gets a chance to relax. This is a 2-day class, and so it's not our traditional 2.5-day class. And so we're putting everything into 2 days. And you never know, you might see a rocket launch there, and during our time there. There's about one every week now. But and so if you've never seen a rocket launch, they're really cool. You can walk right outside the hotel where we're at, and you can watch it. But Jeff, tell us a little bit about the class and what attendees can expect from your segment.
Yeah. So in the class, in the course, I'm going to be walking through the individual elements that we put together to put a plan together. So that way everyone feels really comfortable in understanding, okay, what information do I need to collect from these properties? So that way we have a full plan together. So we can walk through that process together. And then also, how do we how do we get in front of these commercial property managers, and what are we saying in these individual steps? So I kind of gave one little tiny example with that 5 commercial minute win, but we have other layers there, of course, in terms of our follow-up meetings, to get time with the property manager, securing a pre-loss agreement, and what is the holistic picture of your ERP program? What should it look like? What should it include? What does success look like for your ERP program? And so we'll kind of go through all of those elements. And I'll be there on site. Always love being on site for that course. I think the last time I was there, we did see 2 launches, which was super cool.
Mhm.
And we'll have the after hours events to really dive into, if there's additional time that someone wants and needs to get their hands onto the actual product, we can just give access to the actual app itself, and people can put in some information in and see how easy it is to do. And we're actually doing a uh, complete UX and UI design of our entire app right now. And we're super stoked to go through this, because what we did, Tom, was we sat down with existing clients and industry experts, and some people in the restoration world, and said, what's working with ERP, what's not, what do you want improved? And so we're kind of reframing the whole thing. We have it planned release for this June. And so again, just going back off of, like, what are the steps of this ERP process? What do we need included in it? And what does it look like? Because a lot of people don't really they
Yep.
understand conceptually of what a plan is, but they really need to, like, in order to grasp it and be like, okay, here's a complete plan. Here's how I deliver this to a client, and here's how I can just rinse and repeat this over and over again and get my foot in the door. So we'll be kind of going through those steps at the class.
Excellent, excellent. And we'll have a couple drinks out on the pier. hopefully the weather will be nice. It will be. It's always a good time. And so, if you haven't been to one of our business development classes, you need to be at this class. It's a great event, and June is a perfect time to be here in Cape Canaveral. Again, Jeff, thank you very much for your time. We're at the end here, but did you have anything else you want to throw in there, or are we?
No, I would just like to say, that not only is the event really cool, and all of the speakers really bring a diverse set of knowledge and skills to it. The location is amazing, and this is really meant for people who really kind of want to take the next level with their sales and commercial sales, and just sales in general, program to the next level, which I know is really important right now with I think the restoration industry. I think I'm hearing a lot of not trying to rely on online, not trying to rely on third parties. So taking control of your local market is more important than ever right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting time in our market. We're in a transitional period, especially in the residential market. But so it's everybody needs to be at the top of their game right now because it's very very competitive. It's been a little slow. We've been in somewhat of a restoration recession, over the last year or so. Um, some guys are doing really good and some aren't, and so uh, but we hope to level the playing field and get everybody into our Cape Canaveral class. But Jeff, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Enjoy. You're in Austin still, so enjoy Austin. It's
Thank you.
one of my favorite towns. At Nashville, two very cool cities, and enjoy, my friend.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it as always.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Conversations on the Edge with Tom and TJ. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you like what you hear, leave us a review. Join us next time for another Conversation on the Edge.